Let me take you on a quick tour of Calgary. First thing you'll notice, the skyline. With the mountains in the background, it's good. You'll probably take a picture. As you move towards the inner city, you'll feel its culture, the varying neighborhoods. You'll see art. Something will jump out at you. Oh, I should check that out, you might say to yourself. Welcome to Calgary. The place is bustling. Yeah, see, most people are surprised when they get here. They expect something a little more, rustic. Anyway, settle in. You've got a million different things to do, people to meet, places to see. Start with a little food maybe. Check out the culinary scene. A lot of options. Some of the best restaurants in the country are here. Feel like partying? You more of like a dive bar type, or do you want to hit the club? We could do a beer hall or billiards, live music, whatever you want, we got you. There's major events year-round, pro sports, live music. Major acts come through here constantly. There's something going on every night. If you're a morning person, maybe get up early and take in some of the great outdoors. The city's covered in pathways. The longest paved urban pathway system on the continent, in fact. It's over 1,000 kilometers, or around 620 miles if you don't speak metric. So go for a ride, hit up a park. Go fishing right downtown if that's more your thing. The inner city's got beautiful outdoor spots, and then there's like the outdoors. Head west about an hour, and you'll find yourself right here. Yeah, remember to breathe. See, Calgary's got the unique pleasure of being a major metropolitan city while also being a stunning outdoor destination. All the arts, culture, events, dining, and nightlife surrounded in the most beautiful, most fun mountain and park areas that ever graced your eyes. Then look, I don't know exactly what you're looking for or what your idea of a good time is, but what I do know is that you will find it right here in Calgary. Try us. Be part of the energy. In Calgary, Alberta, we love to make movies, and honestly, we're really good at it. And it's because we got a few tricks up our sleeve. It starts with this building right here. It's our film studio. It's serviced a ton of productions of all sizes. Commercials, series TV, features, whatever you got. It's 80,000 square feet, 3 sound stages, an entire rental house right on site. It's the whole deal and then some. But here's the kicker. It's smack dab in the middle of the world's most beautiful, iconic locations. The biggest skies and the best light. In fact, in the right months, golden hour light lasts like 6 hours. Yeah. Our versatility is ridiculous. You can have Leo mauled by a bear in the mountains on his way to his first Oscar in the morning, and then put him on a soundstage that afternoon. We've doubled as downtown LA, Westeros, Denver, outer space, and Fargo, Minnesota for 3 seasons. We've done a ton of period work, from the beginning of time to the far reaches of tomorrow. Filmmaking around here is a chance to work adventurously. It's fun. Plus, we're easy on your wallet, nice on the eyes, and talented as hell in every department. So no matter the genre, period, or scale of your project, Calgary, Alberta is the place to bring it to life. Be part of the energy.
I'm Bernadette Chiaranazzo, and I am a proud Film Circle member. The films that come to the city of Calgary for this unique event really give you an international feeling. You really believe and know that you're seeing some of the greatest works from young filmmakers all over the world.
Everything is connected, and it's not humans and animals or humans and the nature around us. You know, we're all connected.
And that acknowledgement is a way to acknowledge that we're coexisting in this land with the native people, and we should acknowledge that this is actually their traditional territory. But at the same time, we are all guests to this land.
I'd like to welcome Lawrence and Meg Kasdan to Calgary. We're going to talk about their new documentary, Last Week at Ed's. So Lawrence and Meg have been married. They married in 1971, have worked together on a number of projects, starting in 1981 with Lawrence's directorial debut, Body Heat, in which Meg played a nurse. Meg worked as a consultant on The Big Chill and was an executive producer of 2012 Darling Companion and associate producer of 1991's Grand Canyon. She was nominated for an Oscar, Golden Globe, and Writers Guild of America Award for co-writing Grand Canyon. And of course, she co-directed Last Week at Ed's. Lawrence Kasdan began his career writing screenplays for Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Empire Strikes Back, before going on to direct a number of classic films in a wide variety of genres, from the aforementioned Body Heat, which was a modern film noir, to ensemble dramas like The Big Chill and Grand Canyon, to dark comedies like I Love You to Death, to westerns such as Silverado and Wyatt Earp. He's been nominated for 4 Oscars, including a Best Write-In nod he shared with Meg for Grand Canyon, Best Picture and Write-In nominees for 1988's The Accidental Tourist, and a Best Write-In nod for The Big Chill. Last Week at Ed's is a documentary about the last days of a 60-year-old diner in West Hollywood, where the Kasdans were regulars. It chronicles the restaurant's final week, but also delves into its past, the family and staff that ran it, and the community of regulars who relied on it. The film is both funny and heartbreaking, and I think the first documentary that the Kasdans have directed and produced. Hopefully it won't be their last. Please welcome Lawrence and Meg Kasdan. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. So now, are we doing a clip, or we already did the clip?
We can go to it again.
Okay, we're going to go to the clip again, just in case you missed it. So here's a clip from last week.
We're supposed to be closing the end of August. Yeah. And I could raise prices. It would maybe take me through another year or two, but then it's just kicking the can down the road. You need to be charging like $20 for bacon and eggs. I might not be able to keep the business running through the end of August, so this was kind of like
call Monday to see if we're still here.
I'm a psychoanalyst and psychologist.
I'm a clinical psychologist.
We help patients change and grow. We're having a hard time with the change.
I know. I keep telling everybody I just need to wear a T-shirt that says I'm sorry.
You know we're here to the end of the week, right?
And then
We're done. Done.
So I'm thinking this week and. Sorry.
Somehow Ed's was able to survive for 60 years, and we thought it'd be here for another 60 years.
So what's going to become, like another boutique for very rich children or something? Or?
What's coming in is a place called Pizzana. It's the Sprinkles Cupcake people. So it's kind of fancy schmancy pizza. Yeah.
Great. Well, that clip certainly shows that the diner meant a lot to a lot of people. For you as filmmakers, what made you think that's what's going to make a good film? Did you start to think about it before you knew it was going to close? Because obviously you've been regulars for a while, or was the closing what actually started it for you?
Yeah, we went in for lunch one day, and the owner, Ada, who is the woman that you see in the clip, talking to a lot of customers, we just started chatting with her, and we asked her what her plans were for the summer, and she said, well, I think I'm going to close the restaurant this summer. And we were dumbfounded. We had gone there constantly, a couple of times a week at least, for many years, and it was really part of our routine. So we, expressed our shock and dismay. And then we went home that night and talking, I said to Larry, what do you think about maybe making a little documentary of the last week of the existence of Ed's coffee shop? And I had no idea if he would think that was a good idea, but he did. And so we went in a few days later and said to Ada, look, we have this idea. You don't have to tell us now. Think about it. We'll make a little short documentary about the last week of Ed's. And so she went away and did something else for about 5 minutes and came back and said, yeah, I'm in. So I said, you sure you don't want to think about it for a few days? Nope, I'm in. So we did it. We started planning it and planned it for the end of the summer when we thought it was going to close. but it ended up closing 3 weeks earlier than the plan, than was planned. So we were out of town and we came back and shot the thing sort of on the fly and got the last week.
Our crew was in the restaurant doing some camera tests while we were away, and we get a call from them, and they said Ada may not be able to stay open next week. I said, keep shooting, shoot everything you can right now. We'll be back as fast as we can. We came back and we were lucky because we were able to catch that last week just barely.
So you were both part of this story. I mean, I think I read somewhere that you were regulars for 40 years. Why did you choose not to include yourself in the film? Obviously, that's something that some documentary filmmakers do. So why did you must have been two of the more interesting regulars as well. So why did you not include yourself?
Well,
I think we were just fascinated by Ada, and we were fascinated by the other customers. We didn't feel that we needed to be part of that story. That Meg did most of the questioning and the interviewing, and that's how she's represented, I think. We like this little institution. We like what it represents to us about a lot of very personal businesses going out of business, being replaced by chains, being replaced by upscale restaurants. And it's funny, everywhere we've shown the movie, people say, oh, that's happening in my town too. I lost my favorite place last week, last year, last month. And we just like that idea. I think we wanted to keep ourselves out of it.
So when you did choose the people who you wanted to talk to, aside from the family and the staff, of course, so the regulars, obviously they're a colorful bunch. How did you how much of their stories did you already know, and how did you decide which regulars to concentrate on?
Well, Ada told us who her most regular customers were and who she had relationships with. And we had a little bit of a sense of it because we had just been around a lot. Although we didn't really know the people, but they were familiar. And we found everybody wanted to be in the movie. The customers had such a strong feeling for the place, and they wanted to put their 2 cents in about how much they would miss it, and they wanted to tell what their favorite lunch was or what their favorite breakfast was, and what their relationships were what friendships they had made in the restaurant, and what their relationship was with Ada.
And her parents, who some of them knew because it had actually been Ed and Sybil had started the restaurant 60 years earlier. And most of these people weren't there then, but like us, they'd come in over the years. And as soon as you can see in the clip, they were shocked when they heard the place was closing. And when we had said to them prior to that, would you like to be part of this? They were universally interested because it was such an emotional thing for them. They loved Ada, and she's a kind of irresistible character. And I think that comes across in the movie.
Correct me if I'm wrong, this is your first documentary that you directed, both of you produced. So what was that like? What was it like? And not only that, it's a short film format, so it's shorter, obviously. So talk a little bit about what that was like for you. I mean, you're obviously used to fiction. So your first foray to documentary, what was that like?
Well, the week we shot, it was only a week. It was very intense and emotional because people were in tears for 5 days, and she would tell these stories, and some of the stories were really moving. Many people actually knew her mother, and then some people knew her father. So the week that we shot was very intense and emotional, and satisfying. And then, yeah.
It turned out to be kind of a blessing that it jumped up on us much sooner than we thought. So we could fly back into town and go to the restaurant and start shooting. So there's not too much worrying or self-examination about it. It's let's roll. And I think that was what I loved about doing it for the first time. The documentary really writes itself, and you find it in the editing room. When you go in there, you're going on faith that this is a story that will be interesting. And then you hope that you find that story over the course of the production and the editing.
Well, speaking of Roland, I think we're going to go to another clip. This is from last week at Ed's.
Yeah, but I gotta get my money in there in the register first, so I can give you back the 20. All right, there you go. Thank you. This is gonna be Dave from hell.
Wow. Yeah. So there's a lot of, obviously the customers are very emotional about this. But as you mentioned before, I mean, there are some deeper issues that you guys touch on. You don't really dwell on them, but this ideas of gentrification and changing neighborhoods and stuff. Do you think it tells a bigger story about West Hollywood or about Los Angeles or about America? Did you see it that way as being a sort of a snapshot of something that's happening broader, in a broader way?
I hope it does. A lot of these people have lived in West Hollywood for many, many years, or worked in West Hollywood for many years. In that clip, the guy sort of kisses the picture of her parents that's on the wall. So he had, many years of connection. And that's a generation that lived there most their whole life in West Hollywood.
The neighborhood has changed in the same way you're talking about it. It's become more gentrified. It was an enclave of decorating shops, and there were a close-knit group of people who worked in all the shops and the designers who would come in there. In fact, we were introduced to it by 30, 40 years ago by Meg's uncle was a decorator who had come to town and was helping us with our first little house. And when we went to go shopping, he said, I know a great place that we can go, because he ate there every time he came to Los Angeles. And it turned out that was a big part of the clientele. And as the Pacific Design Center opened a few blocks away, a lot of those people drifted away, but there was enormous loyalty too. People who would come back, they just thought this was the only place they could get a straight up tuna fish sandwich, an omelet, and all their favorites that were just old fashioned, straight, like you'd like to have made, you wish your mother had made them.
Yeah, one of the customers just describes it as good plain food, I think, at one point.
Yeah.
And they do talk a lot about it in the film. Did you have favorites? Was there a favorite dish that Ada made that you guys went to back to all the time, or did you try different things?
Well, I like their BLT. I liked a lot of things.
They had a daily special. I would often try that. That had a wonderful, cooked at home feeling to it. And it could be anything. It could be the casserole that she shows in the movie. It could be, burritos that are special made. And there was just something about that little kitchen and the small number of people involved in creating all the food. It gave it a special, what do you call it? That's what's a hamburger place means it's the Asian word for special ingredient that you can't quite put your finger on. And umami, I think it is.
Yeah.
And it had that really in spades. There was some added little tastiness to each of the dishes.
You talked about Ed and Sybil and their backstory. They were from Montreal. They came thinking they were only going to do this as a short-lived venture, and like Ada, it became their life. So, what did you know a lot about their backstory? It's kind of a touching story. Their personality certainly comes out, even though they're not.
We didn't know before we started, and I think one of the pleasures for us was having Ada tell their story and have it be so personal. And I loved her, and we were able to find some of the old stills and the archival stuff that we had never known about the thing. And this very handsome young man who takes over this diner and then works there for the rest of his life. And Sybil being a slightly different presence in the place. And also that their daughter had no plans to take over the thing. And it was sort of forced to do it, and then wound up working there for 30 years.
But she was very involved with her parents. It's a very close family. They still have a lot of relatives in Montreal and around the country.
Yeah. It's a very family thing. And then the clientele became family. And then, the neighborhood went from being a very tiny, a very close-knit little family to a much chicer place. And Ed's was probably one of the last original businesses there. And there are some fancy places that have popped up. And in fact, as she says in the first clip, a very high-end pizza place finally came into that same space.
I read somewhere that you had 125 hours of footage. That's pretty incredible. What was the editing process like? Why only 39 minutes? How hard was it to whittle down this material?
We had our mind set on doing something short, something that people would not have to struggle to sit through. And we were trying to avoid, we knew it was an emotional thing, but we didn't want it to be sentimental. And also since we didn't know what story we were telling exactly, we just kept rolling. And we had 2 cameras going for the whole 6 days or something. And we wound up with a lot of footage, and we just found the editing process it's very different from feature films. In feature film, you very often do change the movie a lot and rewrite it in the editing process, but there's nothing like creating it as you do in documentary in the cutting room. And the stories emerge, and you have a sense of I like everything about that strand of the story, and I like that character. It's very much a discovery thing, and it is a lot of footage to go through, but you want every bit of it when it comes time to create something out of it.
Plus, you're a writer, though. Is this though? I mean, what was it like? Was it liberating? Was it? I mean, you're used to shaping stories.
Very liberating.
Yeah.
Very liberating. You're free in space. You're floating. You're not meeting any preconceptions, and you don't have to get that dramatic scene done. You're just trying to find what am I interested in here, and that's a very different experience than writing and directing narrative films.
Right. You talked a little bit about this already, but what was it like working together? Obviously, you've worked together in the past, but co-directing, this is the first time you co-directed, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what was the division of duties like? How did you guys work together?
I did a lot of the interviewing, as Larry said. He set up the camera, put the camera where he thought it should be. We did a lot of it together. It's like, we should just, let's talk to this person next and let's ask them about such and such. And
And new people were coming in all the time. They would
Right.
sign a release when they came in. And people that had never been there came in, and people that we weren't familiar with at all. And you're just trying to see what is their relationship to this little room, because the restaurant really was a little room. And we had 2 cameras going, and that takes up a lot of room, and a sound guy. So we're edging and wedging our way between the diners as they eat their lunch. And Meg did, as I wanted her right up there by the lens asking questions, because people are very receptive to her. And sometimes I'd whisper in her ear for a new question, but we were on the same page about what was valuable here.
Well, we do have a few questions coming in, if you don't mind. So I thought I'd ask a few. Marnie asks, any words of wisdom for emerging artists?
Yes, I get asked that a lot, as you can imagine, and it's always the same answer, which is don't give up. That's the only thing. And someone said to me very early on, because it took me a while to get started, and they said, you know, the only people doing this work are the ones that didn't quit. And that had a huge impact on me, because there is a strong, it's easier to quit than to keep hitting your head against the wall and being frustrated and feeling underappreciated. And it's really actually the fact that you don't quit is one of the major qualifying qualities you need to have a career like this and to be in the thing you love. And so you have to be devoted to it when no one's giving you any attention, when there's no money, when there's nothing. If you really love it, then just stick to it.
In fact, don't you have sort of a famous story about one of your first screenplays, which was The Bodyguard, that I think you originally wrote for Steve McQueen. It was rejected 7 times.
67 times, and I didn't know Steve McQueen. I just worshipped Steve McQueen. I loved him and I loved his movies. And I had written several scripts before that, and that went nowhere, and then people did not react that well to. But when I wrote that one, I always used to show my older brother. Well, he was interested in film too. I'd show him these scripts, and he was very supportive. Not that useful, because he was so supportive. He would say everything was great. But when I showed him The Bodyguard, he said, that's really a movie. And he turned out to be right. And it took about 14 years for the movie actually to come to fruition. But there was something about that screenplay, even though it was rejected a lot, when it finally did get sold, it just hung around different casting ideas. And Kevin Costner and I became close on Silverado. And he said he wanted to do that movie. And I said, that's great, but you have to become a movie star. He was a complete unknown at that point. And in about 2 years, he had become a giant movie star, and he never let go. He said, I want to do that script the way you wrote it back in 1975.
Well, that kind of leads to another. Brandon asks, how do you solicit feedback when working on a film you are personally connected to and passionate about?
How do you solicit opinions? You know, I think it starts like everything with your friends, with your family, the people you trust. It's always difficult, you know, to expose what you've done to new eyes, because they always see things that you never saw. And so sometimes it's shocking. What do you think about that process?
Yeah, you know, it's painful. You're opening yourself up to criticism, but try to be tough about it.
Try to be open-minded, tough-minded. Yeah. And see, are they, you know, because there's a natural, you get possessive about anything that you've created. It's so hard to create something. And you think, well, I understand why it's that. And when someone you trust comes in and says, it shouldn't be like that, it takes a minute or two to really let it into your head and see if they're right or wrong.
And sometimes they're wrong.
Yeah. And you have to sort that out, which is exhausting.
Or they're wrong for us.
I read a quote recently, Lawrence, where he said, it's become more difficult in Hollywood to make movies about things I always made movies about. Now, given you had such a wide range of genres that you worked in, why do you think that is? I mean, you did westerns, you did black comedies, you did romantic comedies, you did ensemble dramas. This is sort of supposed to be a golden age for content. Is it?
Yes. Well, I think it actually has become a golden age for content. It just popped up in a surprising place. And well before the pandemic, everything was migrating to streaming, where people can have much more access, easier access. They don't have to go out and find a place to park, and they don't have to listen to the people sitting next to them. Now that it's a forced thing, people are starting to get really nostalgic about what it was like to go to a movie theater. But there had already begun this very big movement that where streaming was willing to do material that Hollywood no longer wanted to do. And when I say it was the kind of movie, all my movies, no matter what genre they were in, they were really about people and relationships and about honor and friendship and love. And that's not really what's happening in Hollywood right now. There are great independent films being made every day and wonderful that are still dealing with those subjects. But if you go into a major studio now and try to get the financing for a movie about those subjects, forget about it.
There always seemed to be a bit of a divide from the beginning of your career where you were writing these big films like Raiders of the Lost Ark and Empire Strikes Back to the ones you chose to direct. Silverado aside, did you ever have any sort of inclination to make a big sprawling action adventure film?
Oh yeah, right from when I was a kid, my brother and I used to play westerns, and I grew up in West Virginia, and we'd go into the woods and we'd each have a 6-gun and we'd play western. I loved westerns. So many of the westerns had influenced me as I studied film. But I think what really happened for me is I was on a road to make those movies. I wanted to write and direct movies. And there were many, many wonderful models of auteurs that had influenced me enormously coming up. And I wanted to do that too. And I accidentally, the second screenplay I sold was bought by Steven Spielberg. And Steven Spielberg said, I'm doing something with George Lucas and we want you to write it. And I went to meet them, and that put me on to another track entirely. And it helped me get to be a director very quickly, because the movies first I wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark, not Empire. And then when I was done with Raiders of the Lost Ark, George asked me to write The Empire Strikes Back. So that's all going on. At the same time, I'm writing originals and trying to get my first movie made. So that when it came time for me to do that, I said to the head of a studio, he said, we want you to write something. I said, I'm not writing for anybody anymore. I'm going to direct. And he said, well, what is it you want to do? And I told him about Body Heat, and it worked out. So it was an accident that I got involved with these gigantic blockbusters. They turned out to be the key for me to get in to do what I wanted to do.
We don't have very much time left, but Mike has asked a question. He wants to ask a question about The Big Chill, which of course is the classic. He says The Big Chill was a film about unwanted change that leads to opportunity for catharsis and appreciation of what we have. And he says that this documentary seems to offer a very similar message.
That's probably true. What do you think about that theme? Unexpected change that leads to opportunity. I mean, that's certainly there, don't you think?
In the Big
And appreciation.
And yes, it's in The Big Chill, but it's also in Last Week at Eds. We don't have much control over the world, and it never felt more like that than today. And the question is, what do you do with change and with the abrupt change, and how do you deal with it? And are you able to make something good, something you feel good about, out of circumstances you have no control over? So I think that he's exactly right. There is a theme throughout. In Silverado, they're making their life up as they go west, which was sort of what was happening in all Westerns and what was happening in the country, where There were no laws and there were no rules, and people had to make up their life. And I'm really drawn to that story.
Well, hopefully you can come to Alberta and make a Western. That would be,
I would like
we're
to.
experts at it. So
I know, it's gorgeous up there.
yeah, you're going to be working on a few more documentaries. I read though. Is that an area you want to get into?
Yes, I'm doing a couple projects. One will be a series on Disney Plus, and the other is about a man that I revere in the show business. 93 years old, and he's one of the most impactful record executives that ever lived. He brought everybody to nurtured so many giant stars. So I'm interested in that.
Right. And so documentary sounds like that's sort of
Yeah.
area you're going to be concentrating on, at least for the next little while.
Yeah, and maybe that's it. I think that times are changing so fast, and the culture's changing so fast. I think that maybe the fact that my two sons are making movies in their 40s, they're at a more appropriate age to keep up with what's going on. And I think that I have turned toward documentary because I find that real life is absolutely fascinating.
Well, I think we are running out of time, but I want to thank both of you for this beautiful film. It's really lovely. I hope everybody gets a chance to see it. And thanks for joining us here in Calgary.
Thank you, Eric. We appreciate being invited.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for your time.
It's fun.
Okay.
Very much. Thanks, everybody.